Hello and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode, I'll be discussing the 2022 period mystery adventure and sequel, Enola Holmes 2, as directed once again by Bradbeer and as based on the Nancy Springer series of mystery novels featuring the titular character, but not in a change of direction from the first movie, actually based on any of the specific novels in the series. Set once again in Victorian London, this movie instead brings an original story, set amongst the backdrop of the Match Girl strike of 1888, which had a profound effect on the way women started to be treated in the workplace within the United Kingdom, rather than simply seen as a means to an end, disposable and inconsequential. So, in this, the film certainly, hits on a very deep and kind of meaningful topic that certainly sparked revolution to many and indeed remains in keeping with the more politically derived ethos of the franchise set up during Enola's first outing, remaining with a strong sense of doing the right thing against a politically charged, money-grabbing and greed-enthused case to crack. Once again, we meet Enola Holmes, as played by Millie Bobbitt Brown, the younger and more tenacious sister of the master sleuth Sherlock Holmes, as played by Henry Cavill, striving to make a name for herself as a female detective in a man's world. Following her success with the case of the missing Marquis, however, with the papers claiming it was Sherlock who actually uncovered the secrets of the case and foiled the dastardly plan, Enola struggles to find paying clients who, let's face it, are reticent to believe a female would be capable of doing anything other than smiling and looking faint. However, just as she was losing hope, fate throws her another chance in the form of Bessie, as played by Su-Ling Bliss, who's looking to find out what's happened to her sister, Sarah Chapman, as played by Hannah Dodd, both who work as matchstick girls at the Lion Match Factory. Soon, Enola does find herself kind of embroiled in a case that digs deeper and cuts harder than any other, testing her judgment and ability to stay detached like no other, but just might be her greatest strengths, and along with her brother, Sherlock, and a little help from some old friends, she finds it in herself to kind of unravel every tangled web she finds, prodding a veritable hornet's nest along the way, and discovering that her case of a missing person may just end up with a more sinister intent than she ever thought possible. Firstly, like Enola's first outing, I did like the idea that this was kind of set against a series of true events, and in fact, one with more poignancy within British labour laws at a time of kind of, great political and industrial upheaval. But this does make it feel a lot darker. It has higher stakes, and in that we lose quite a bit of the kind of buoyancy and flamboyant elements of the first. But I found what we got in return was a movie with a more balanced story, with a more involved investigative backbone. Secondly, it was actually partially filmed in my neighbourhood, Hull, or Kingston upon Hull, if you like. I actually have a claim to fame where I live. I did try my best to kind of spot some of the locations they used in filming. However, I must admit that they did an absolutely amazing job at making our often forgotten piece of British backwater look like the dark and murky alleyways of Victorian London. The film brings back some of the quirky narrative style used in the first. Brown continues to break the fourth wall, but everything feels much more moderated, less persistent, and to some, I think, will find much less, it's much less forced to the audience and kind of in your face. There's much more of a balanced feel in this respect, leaving much more room for the investigation and all of its twists and turns. There's less action, and when we do get into a scrap, I would suggest the choreography and sequences feel much more simplistic, less involved. However, personally, I found this to be much more in keeping with a Sherlock Holmes-style adventure. Such adventures were never about beating your enemy to a pulp, but always brains over brawn, outsmarting them with wit and superior intelligence. And this is certainly what we get here. A much more involved investigation that more befits a Holmes outing, whether Sherlock or Enola or otherwise. It's a great and very often bleak kind of outing, you know? Missing some of Enola's upbeat and often optimistic charm. Everything feels heavy, more doom and gloom, but more reserved, more mature on the same basis. But it's still playful in itself, in its delivery, and Brown still looks like she's relishing every last minute. Her enthusiasm and hunger for the character is once again, quite infectious. I'm still not quite sure really what to make of her as an actress. I can't really comment that much. I've not seen her in, anything but Godzilla, really. I haven't seen Stranger Things. Just Godzilla. But I'll tell you what, this role fits her like a glove, and I think she plays up to the character excellently, giving it the constant energy and repertoire that it needs to carry it through. She's having an absolute blast, and it more than shows in her performance once again, but feeling much more settled this time around. I loved its observational, style of investigation. It felt like everything could be a clue this time around, and I did find myself getting quite wrapped up in it all. I definitely found it to be much more of an intriguing plot this time around, much more involved and quite intricately weaved together. The game most definitely felt like it had found its feet again. It gets straight into it as well. It's not so concerned with setting up Enola or any of the other returning characters. It builds squarely on the original in this respect without any trite repetition. But for a quick and energetic recap nonetheless, Enola style, just so we're all caught up in the same place. I found it to be both wonderfully Enola, albeit some more darker and somewhat sombre affair, and wonderfully Sherlock at the same time, and struck this kind of amazing balance between the two. It was brilliant to see how they kind of operated individually, their unique style, their modus operandi, their distinctive energies, and how these can, often came very much head to head, yet complementary at the same time, which doubled down on the fun. They had a great brother-sister kind of rift and some well-meaning rivalry which kind of fueled the banter and wordplay. Cavill is excellent once again as Sherlock. They need to do something with him in the future. I mean, I hope we get another Enola, but, Cavill, perfect. I'd love to see another Sherlock with him. But with a more kind of rough, outer this time around. His current case is vexing, and he takes, it basically to heart. A personal challenge to crack the code, if nothing else. And for the brief moments we do get to see Helen Bonham Carter as Enola's mother, Eudora, she's absolutely relishing the time on screen and gives everything a bit more of an energetic boost. A kind of mad eccentric role that, she was almost born to play, or at least typecast into. Furthermore, we also have the introduction of Sherlock's arch nemesis, Moriarty. If I say that right, I can never say that name right. But we get Moriarty into the franchise, and I certainly like what they did here. It fits the angle the series is going for, but because of that, I did kind of have that element and direction pegged from the start, but it was still a great way to kind of bring the character into the fold. So, certainly looking forward to more of that in that respect. Overall, in Enola's second outing as a super sleuth in the making, we have a much darker, more sombre case, which turns out to be quite the puzzler. You can tell that, that they've tried to tone things down a little bit from the first. They've tried to make it have a little bit more of a wider appeal, I would say. But in doing this, I think it lost a little of the charm and its uniqueness in the process. But the trade-off was a much better and more inclusive story, and with a more structured and investigative approach that kind of befit both Enola and Sherlock collectively. This, this was more ingeniously kind of woven together, and the connection to real-life events gave it a bit of a sophisticated edge. Still playful and full of spirit, don't get me wrong, definitely true to its characters, but more reserved, perhaps more mature. You can certainly feel the emotional weight of the case, and to me, it proves they're kind of in it for the long haul and care about these characters and where they're actually heading. The stakes are higher, there's a lot more clues, lots more to the intrigue, and there's certainly a bit more that catches you by surprise, with, all the twists and turns at every step almost. The stage is set for a totally delightful and creative adventure that totally charms its socks off by the end. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please do leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. Absolutely loved having you at SciFirst Movie Talk. Definitely love to have you back. Most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.